Beginning on Night Vale podcast in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Night Vale podcast, where normal is not my specialty. I am your host, as always, the King Oddball himself, Adam Higgins. And this is a show where I ramble and rant and tell you about all the shit going on in my head, in my life, and my everything. And I'm gonna tell you now, you know what? I'm dropping the news. I'm just gonna do it. Get that out of the way. But I also tell you about some podcasts that I'm into and I think you should be listening to too. Because like I always say, sharing is caring. And I realize that that is a trademarked saying, and that's why I haven't put it on a t-shirt yet. But, you know. Okay, I'm vamping because I didn't want to go back and trim the music. Sue me. So, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing okay with my extended time between episodes right now while I'm getting back in the groove of things and working around school schedules. You know, we got into a lot of that on the last episode, all of the headache that is. So, I wanted to kind of finish the catch-up that I was doing last week that I got so sidetracked by my whole thumb incident. And incidentally, update on my thumb. I'm pretty much healed up now. It's been it's I can't tell time. It's almost been a month. I can't believe it. Thinking about it, it's holy shit. I'm sitting here thinking, oh, it's been like 2 weeks. It's like, no, it's actually been like a month. Holy shit. But yeah, damn. But my thumb is for the most part healed up. It's a little flatter than, the rest of my thumb on that one side. It's still a little sensitive, but I'll say that's my fault. Cause you know that whenever you get, and ladies may not be as common for you as it is for guys, but whenever you get kind of the built up skin in the corner of your nails and you tend to just kind of chew on it and kind of get one of those things going and it doesn't quite come off and you're going to try and tear it away and you're trying to tear it and you end up ripping the skin and it tears. And well, I was doing that because I'm stupid, because even when you have a big friggin' thing on your thumb and you're doing that, you still are stupid and end up peeling back the skin on your thumb. So you end up with, no skin on the tip of your finger for a while. That is more of my problem right now. My thumb is really super sensitive right now because I don't have any, it's kind of growing that back. And trying to do that while, healing from slicey. Not smart. Because sometimes I'm just not smart. But my thumb's doing a lot better. I've, other than a little bit of sensitivity in like right there at the like center mass of where the cut was. For the most part, I can function again. I can put my phone back in its correct pocket. I can reach for my wallet. So I'm like 90% back up with my thumb. And I'm really happy. If you don't look at it really closely at this point, you can't actually tell. Really, like, it looks like just my thumb is a lumpy. So, yay. I think it'll probably be like a full recovery and all that. And maybe I won't have to relearn how to hold a guitar pick. That'll be nice. But as I was saying, I want to kind of catch up and get the review of the stuff from last year and all the stuff that you missed. Granted, it's not going to be all the stuff that you missed because, let's face it, I could go on for hours and hours and hours and get how long do I spend talking about my garden? Seriously? And that's a huge part of the time. My garden takes up a huge part of time of stuff and bullshit I can talk about for, like, I have. I say I could do whole episodes about my garden. I kind of have. But I could devote entire episodes to each of the different things, like major events that happened during my hiatus. But that feels like I'm just kind of like stretching it out. Like just milking it for content. And if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you know that for the most part, because of the kind of what's going on in my brain right now, free flow of thought, train of thought, off the tracks sort of nature of this show, it's very much front of mind, current event stories type things. I don't like digging back into, going back into 6 months ago and this thing that happened. No, I don't like doing that. It's what's going on now at the time of recording, what's in my brain, what's front of mind. And so I just want to get the review done and out of the way, mostly because I wrote up a whole fucking blog post about it and have all the show notes written. And goddamn it, I'm not going to sit here and waste my time. Because I spent so much time putting together these full show notes that had the news in it that I already mentioned. I'm dropping the news. It's just too damn much work to keep up with. And if I'm going to be doing the work for, wanting to write complete show notes and more blog posts and all this stuff, scrounging the news and doing really in-depth show notes for the news, it's just more work than I have time for. That's it. I've got time to write a review. I've got time to write a good segment and, write up good show notes to try and prep for the show. I don't have time to do all that and hunt for the news and write those news clips into the show notes. It's just so damn much work. I can't do it anymore. And really, I'll say this. And the only piece of feedback I got from last show when I said, hey, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to go and keep on with the news? Do you want me to drop segments? Because I never asked and all that stuff. The only piece of feedback that I actually got was actually a text to the Odd Dad Out line, which I told you can text me or leave a voicemail. It's 516-636-7631. Get that out of the way. Bookmark it. I don't know. But it came from awesome listener Tori, and you are extra awesome for leaving a text message for me and saying, I'm glad you're back. I really like your podcast and enjoy the random ramblings. And left a podcast recommendation of Me and Paranormal You, which I have actually been checking out. A quick rundown of that one. It is very much in the vein of Coast to Coast and that style of radio show. Kind of the Art Bell sort of paranormal weirdo type stuff. Very woo. Just kind of my quick rundown of that. But yeah, I've been checking that out. Thank you again, Tori. And I said, I texted Tori back and said thank you and lots of other stuff that I'm not going to read my own messages to somebody else. But I can talk about you too. I got a sidetrack of the spiel. But in all of this, I realized it's so much work doing the damn news, and it's so much easier for me. And this is my comfort zone in the show is the part where I'm riffing and I'm doing the thing that I'm better at in podcasting than most people. And I don't want to say this. It sounds egotistical, but I can riff and I can sit there and talk to the void. You're right there. You're listening. You're the void. I can sit and talk to the void better than I can talk to somebody else. So I don't need another person to riff off of. And so this is what I do. So I'm going to focus on this. I think I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to be giving the podcast recommendations, and hopefully I'll be able to get out of this, house cleaning or upkeep or updates or whatever you want to call this, segment that I keep drifting back into, and get on with the actual updates that I've been telling you I've been wanting to talk about. So let's just jump back to, God, where were we? We talked about on the last show, we kind of got into all the BS going on with the schools and the school schedule and all this stuff. And my boys still have 2 more weeks. I think they moved us out. We're on full-time distance learning through the end of January. And hopefully in the beginning of February, they're supposed to go back to the hybrid where they're 2 days on, 2 days off, and doing that. And so that's kind of a update there. We just got our email saying it's time to register for next year. And they're right now they're planning on back open to full regular schedule with a full 5-day schedule and all, K through 8, everybody's on campus, sports and everything are back. As of right now, their plan for next year is everything back to full capacity on campus. We'll see how that goes because, government intervention in schools being what it is, you never know what's going to happen. So we'll see. Granted, that's almost a year away. I mean, that's after the summer. That's 9 months from now. We'll see where we are in 9 months. We said 9 months ago. Okay. I keep going back there. But let's see. I've got to pull up my show notes. That's actually what I have to do. I have to pull up the notes I made. Holy shit, I made notes. So I know I talked about the garden last time, and it kind of got in, which veered into a slicey story. But I kind of want to just give more of another quick update. I know I talked about how, we planted our fall garden and we were having all this success with cucumbers and we're making pickles. And I don't remember if I told you that a week or so ago, I actually went and cut and picked all the last of the cucumbers and pulled out the rest of those plants, and kind of we're getting ready to prep that bed for the spring. And right now I'm going to have to I'm going to have to add tons of fertilizer and compost and lots of other nutrients and stuff because that same bed, without much modification, has had pumpkins in it twice. It's had cucumbers. There's something else. We've grown a ton of stuff in that bed since we've put it there, and that soil is getting kind of tapped out. So I need to add a lot of fertilizer and amendments to that soil to really beef it up for our next round in the spring. Because we've got a whole new plan of everything we're going to do. I think we're going to move the tomatoes into another area. We still currently in that bed have green onions, garlic. I think I have 2 or 3 garlic plants in that bed, and popcorn. I don't remember if I mentioned that, but we're actually growing popcorn right now. And my wife found a variety called glass bead. I believe it's glass bead popcorn. And if you've ever seen this variety of popcorn, the kernels are very, very shiny and lots of bright colors. And so you'll have these bright blue and red and purple and orange popcorn kernels that are super shiny and very glass beady. It's a very fitting description and name for this. And so we've got a bunch of that. And the thing about corn, I didn't know, and nobody tells you when you grow corn, because when you're looking up information on how to grow plants, there's tons of information on how to grow lots of things. There really isn't a lot of information about being a home gardener with raised beds and growing corn. Most of the stuff for growing corn is you grow a field of corn, not I'm growing 3 plants in a box. They don't tell you that. So we had started with 3 corn kernels, 1, 2, 3, in 3 little spots. And we gave them lots of space because we know corn can get pretty big. And what we didn't know is that each of those, the main stalk comes up, but then they started, and to be fair, like every other plant, started kind of having offshoots and side shoots. And the next thing we know, each of those main corn stalks that we planted, that we expected, okay, one corn goes in, one great big stalk comes up, and then we have a big corn stalk, and we're going to get corn from that. Each one that we planted now has 5 stalks coming off of it. So 3 little popcorn seeds has turned into 15 stalks of corn, which are now in the 7 to 8 foot range. And we have a 10-foot wall that it's sitting against. And so we're slightly concerned that it's going to get above the wall before it's possibly harvest time. But we're super excited because in the last week, we're finally starting to see the beginnings of the ears coming up. And we were like, okay, well, how do you know when you're getting corn and it's not just, growing and growing and growing? And we're like, okay, well, and we see a thing when you start seeing these things sneaking up, kind of like it looks like between the different kind of fronds. I wouldn't even call them leaves because, corn isn't really, it's not a tree. It's like, it's a grass, technically. It's a grain. And so like between the individual leaf whatevers, you'll see the little, the husks, the silks, the tops of the things start peeking out, and you'll see that. And that's where your corn is. And we're like, we started seeing, I think I've got 6 or 7 that I finally caught this week that we're super excited. We're like, yes, we're going to have corn. So we're super excited for corn if it makes it, because we don't know. The thing about Arizona winters is they could be really mild. Like we've had this year so far. We haven't really had any hard freezes, which is great for our garden. Weird in a general sense, because we've had a couple nights into the upper 30s. Nothing like really, really freezing. We haven't had any hard freezes, which has been great. Crossing our fingers not to kill our garden, but you kind of base your gardening around freezes. But February is really when it gets really cold here. So I'm not holding my breath for it to end. I'm expecting it. We're going to get a freeze here in a month or so. Whatever. Weather time's over. But we're really, we're hoping we'll get a corn harvest, because it's just cool that we grow our own popcorn, and we'll probably save some to plant later, even though we still have a ton that we could plant. But we're planning also to plant sweet corn in the spring. And that is supposed to go in the other bed where the peppers, and I think we might actually put it where we have the tomatoes right now, because we're planning on taking the tomatoes out of there, like I said, and moving over into the other bed where the cucumbers and all that. We're still going to plant another round of cucumbers and some more stuff like that. And I think we're going to do cantaloupes coming up in the spring. So we got our whole spring garden plan coming up, which I'll probably talk about more as we get closer to that. But we're doing all this stuff, and we're, planning and plotting. And I've finally put in carrots, and I finally have a batch of carrots that are doing well. The carrots that I have planted in this last round, I think I've tried planting carrots like 5 or 6 times. This is the first time where I've got like real stems and growth. And I'm actually seeing like the signs that my carrot plants are actually growing, and I might get, it looks like maybe a half a dozen carrots. I wasn't expecting a ton, but I might get maybe 6 or 7 carrots if it stays kind of the way it is. 1 is success for me, because like realistically, when I've tried like 5 or 6 times to grow carrots and it's so far been a big 0, I'm excited for my carrots. I'm super excited for my carrots right now every day. But we're gearing up to pick the last of the tomatoes. I got to go in and cut down all of my lettuce and figure out what I'm going to do with the like 8 heads of lettuce I have back there right now. We've got a handful of peppers, but it's really, I'm just going to get to, end of winter harvesting, get everything rounded up so I can flip the gardens and turn everything into new gardens for the spring. So we can get on that, because, and I still, I'm sitting here with, I think I have 5 or 6 heads of garlic that are in the ground that still won't be ready. My understanding, they won't be ready until like the mid-spring. Like garlic takes forever. Carrots take forever too. But I've got a bunch of green onions that I'm looking forward to. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I'm thinking I might take them and be cheap and, hey, sour cream, and chop some fresh chives in there and dip, or mix them in, use them with some butter and a steak. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with all those green onions I've got, but they're doing great now. I'm super excited just seeing them, because the stems on my green onions are thicker than my garlics right now. And my garlics have been in there for months and months and months and months and months. It's just so crazy seeing how much bigger plants get than their seeds. That's been something so crazy to me in my gardening journey here. But moving on from the garden. So if you're a long time listener, you know that every summer, my family and we all take a trip back to visit our family in South Texas, because that's where my wife is from. And her parents are still there, and my dad and my brothers are still there. And so we go back, we visit family every summer. Well, because the world is a mess, we weren't able to go back. At the time where we were trying to go in July, and I think I talked about this back in July, cases were spiking here in Arizona and in Texas. There were kind of some travel restrictions. It was going to be messy. We're still kind of in a overall world state of, we don't know a lot yet. It could be all right. We don't know a lot yet. So we're going to take it. We're going to play it safe, and we're going to delay our trip. We delayed until October because we knew the boys had a second vacation. They had they have a fall break in October. And so we're like, okay, after fall break, we'll go during fall break. No big deal. It's going to be a couple of days shorter because, it's in the school year. We got to be back for, earlier time, whatever. Not a big deal. Time gets closer. We're like, we can't go. Both because the world's still kind of crazy. We know a lot more. By October, we knew a lot more going about the whole, pandemic situation. But financially speaking, we actually were in a tighter position where we weren't sure we were going to be able to afford the trip. And we had some stuff happen financially where, and it's kind of worked itself out now. But at the time, we'd gotten some news that we were like, financial strain kind of kicked us right then. And we're like, we don't know if we're going to be, what our financial situation is going to be in the next few months, which again, that's all worked itself out. But at the time, we were in kind of a panic mode. And so we decided to cancel our big trip. Well, that also meant that for the most part, my wife and kids have not left the house by that point. They hadn't left the house since March. We'd gone to my sister's house once, maybe twice in the entire time. That's it. They hadn't left other than for doctor's appointments. The boys hadn't left. My wife hadn't left. She's been home. She'd been working from home since March, I think. And that's at this point, I believe, going to continue indefinitely. So it's been, tricky. And so what we ended up doing, just as we need to get out. We need to get out of the house. I still go to work. Again, I've said this before. In the grand scheme of things, pandemic life hasn't affected me too much. I still go to work. My job is, I work in commercial cleaning. My job is it's not an essential function like, this type of job or that type of job. My job is cleaning buildings. My job is cleaning offices. My job is to go in, and part of our job now is, and I've mentioned this before, is sanitizing and disinfecting buildings so that when other person who has to go to work in an office, goes to your office, your office is clean. That's what we do. And, our job is to disinfect your offices so it's a safe environment for you to go back to. Well, I've been working. It hasn't affected me much. Minus, usual holiday slowdown and stuff like that because, offices close at the holidays, blah, 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 blah. But everybody else has been cooped up at home, and everyone was, to say everybody had cabin fever is putting it mildly. Everybody was just biting each other's heads off. No patience, anybody. And so we decided we need to get out. We need to get out. We need to spend some time away from the house. Everybody needs to get out of the house. We need some sort of a vacation time because we just lost 9 days in Texas that we normally, we're on the road for such a long time. We get to go to all these shops, all these different things we do, going to the aquarium, seeing all the stuff that we always do as part of our vacation. None of that got done. We've just been home. The boys have just been home. They're bored. They're tired of it. So we're like, you know what? Here's what we can do. Our cure for cabin fever was to rent a cabin. Because we like those sort of silly sort of things. So we ended up renting a cabin up in northern Arizona at it's a Lyman Lake in northern Arizona. It's still about 5 hours. It's a 5-hour drive up into the mountains and forests of northern Arizona. And, it's just October, so it's late fall, but this is northern Arizona, where this is very close to Colorado. So the environment there, very different than down here in the valley, where it was like 85, 90 degrees at home while we were on this vacation. But we go up to this cabin and the overnight lows were in the 20s and like 28 to 30-ish overnights. And we rented this really quaint little cabin. It's like a 2-room cabin. There's like a little bedroom in the back with a couple of bunk beds for the boys. And then there's a queen size bed in the front room. And there's an air conditioner and a table. And it's more like a counter. That's the cabin. Very well insulated. 100%. I will tell you, it's very well insulated. We were completely unaware that it was freezing balls outside. It was fucking cold. Oh, and I know this because of having to get up and go walk the dog at like 3 a.m. But notice I didn't mention there's a bathroom in there, because there's not. The cabins, because it was on a state park. So there was like campgrounds for tent camping and RV camping and all that stuff. Well, there were also a handful of cabins of various sizes. And the bathrooms were across a field from us. We were actually relatively close. I think our cabin was actually the closest cabin to the bathrooms. But we basically had to walk between the little solar lamps in the middle of open desert area along this little lit path of solar lamps stuck in the dirt to get to the bathrooms, which were again fully lit and everything. And there was parking if I was feeling so inclined to get in the van and drive all the way over. It would actually have taken me longer to drive over to the bathroom than just walk across the friggin' dirt. But again, this is the Arizona desert, and I'm walking across basically open desert space in the middle of the night. There could have been a snake. There could have been tons of snakes or tarantulas or scorpions or anything. No fucking clue. But we bought a ton of, we just went all out. We're like, we're fucking camping, damn it. And because, the cabin, there's mattresses and there's bunk beds, but there isn't any bedding. So you're supposed to bring your own bedding. We're like, screw it. We'll just bring sleeping bags for the boys. And we'll get these little individual kind of suitcases, pouches for them. So they have their little pouch for all of their clothes. And when they're in bed, they can use that as their pillow, just kind of their bag of clothes for their pillow. And they've got their sleeping bags and their bunk bed. Cool. And we got a couple of sleeping bags for us. And for the sake of everything, we got adult sleeping bags for everybody so that the boys will never grow out of them. Because wouldn't it suck if you go and buy a bunch of kid-sized sleeping bags and then in 2 years your kids outgrew them and you're like, well, shit, now you got to buy new sleeping bags. So we just got adult-sized sleeping bags for everybody. We got some lanterns because, again, we're in the middle of the fucking dark. And, sidebar to, we're up in the middle of fucking nowhere. Middle of nowhere. The nearest town is 10 minutes outside the park. It is like 10 minutes up the road. It is a tiny little town with this is a Ace Hardware and neighborhood gas station kind of town. Not much in this town. like when I had to fill up the van before we got out of town, because you have to fill up in that town because the next gas is like an hour away. But you got to fill up there. This town is so old, you still have to lift the little handle on the gas pump. That's how old this town, that's how, and so it's like that. But when you're out there in the middle of nowhere, in this middle of this state park outside this lake, there's no light pollution. There's no anything. There's no noise. There's no light pollution. You sit out on the front porch of the cabin and you can look. It's just silent. At all the other campsites, all the other cabins, everybody keeps their noise down. I mean, there's a lights out noise violation. Hey, after this time, everything, lights out kind of stuff. But you can look up straight and see everything. And the boys had never seen the sky like that and just sat up at night watching the sky and just were amazed, just looking up at the sky. And, this was this whole, and we were there for 3 days, and it was, this was an experience where we immediately were like, this is it. This is what we are going to do. This is going to be a regular thing for us. Whether, we go on our vacation back to Texas, whatever we do, this is going to be a thing in the spring and fall. This is going to be we're going to go, it's not camping. It's like, but we're going to go camping. We're going to go and rent our cabin. And because part of this experience was also that, again, what did I describe this cabin as? It's basically 2 rooms with some beds and a counter. There's no refrigerator. There's no stove, nothing. There is a grill outside. There is a fire pit outside. And all of your food you have to bring coolers and keep ice. And if you need ice for the, overnight, which I figured out at the last day, why am I buying ice for overnight? It's 20 degrees outside. I'm just going to wheel the cooler out onto the deck and I'm going to put the cooler outside the door. I'm not worried about my neighbors stealing my bologna. But we just you have to bring your own coolers. You have to keep your own ice on it. You need to have firewood or some sort of cooking device if there is fire cooking, because, we're in the desert. There could be burn bans, and a lot of the other parks in other parts of the state actually had burn bans. We were fortunate that area and that park did not have a burn ban, because we'd have been screwed. I have no clue what we would have done for food if we couldn't use fire. But we packed up, we brought firewood and charcoal for the grill and my cast iron pans. And every single meal we had for 3 days had to be cooked with those fires. I had to get up first thing in the morning. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting up with the sun. And the very first thing I have to do is go out to the grill and start the fire to boil water for coffee and get the grill going, because we got a little jar. I don't know if you've seen the kind of add water, shaky jar of pancake mix. Just add water. And we did bring our own water. We had like 5 gallons of clean water that we brought for cooking, and drinking and all that. But there was also water spigots on site that we would use for like washing dishes and stuff like that. But we got a little dish tub and little soap for camp soap. And we did everything. We got all this shit. And we're probably going to get more shit for our next trip. But, every morning I have to get up and start cooking. And I was making pancakes and sausage. I cooked burgers on the grill. We did hot dogs over the fire pit. Have to, every afternoon or evening, get the fire pit going so that we have heat. I'm cooking dinner either on the fire, through the fire pit, because, we did hot dogs in the fire. We did s'mores over the fire. It was so fun. But man, I spent the better part of 3 days as camp cook, basically. Because, when you're camp cook, you got to get up first because you got to get the fires going because you need coffee. You need breakfast. It's like, oh, we had oatmeal one morning. Well, for oatmeal, I have to have fire because I need hot water. So I've got to go. We got a, not a percolator, just like a camp, kettle, I guess. And just a ceramic, those blue ceramic kettles, and just go and boil. I just had to boil a couple of kettles of water and, get that going. Just so it's like, okay, well, we need, instant coffee and I need hot water for oatmeal, or I need, I have my flat top cast iron, griddle, and I threw that on the grill to make pancakes and sausage. And camp breakfast it was so fun. It was just probably one of the best parts of that trip. Seriously, as much as holy crap, it's a lot of work for me. That was like, making burgers and the sheer joy of everybody just enjoying their food and sitting down with their little plastic plate and, their camp utensils, sitting there on their bench or in their little folding chair with their chocolate milk or whatever we had for them that morning, and that was like everybody loved it. Nobody complained about anything. Everybody had a blast, and it just made no, even if we got to a point, we shut off our phones because we were so far away from civilization. We had no service. We really were in a situation where in case of emergency, we have to go up to the ranger station or the ranger's house, which is on site, like right up the hill from us. Like if there's an emergency, our phones don't do shit. We have to run our ass up to the ranger station. That was the situation we were in. That's how far we were away. So our phones were off for 3 days. And, we didn't even time was told by my watch because phones were off. We didn't really know what time it was other than looking at my watch. That was it. Kind of crazy. It was like, hey, what time is it? I don't know, but the sun's coming down. We need to get dinner started. So that was just, it was the craziest thing. Start the fire going for dinner by the time everything's ready and hot and everyone's eating. And we could have been sitting there eating dinner, and it's like the night we got there, first thing I had to do, we got everything unloaded. Everybody's still unloading the van, get everything set up in the cabin. I'm already starting fire for dinner because we need to eat because we got there at 5:30. And the sun's going to be down in an hour. We need fire now. So I had to get the fires going to have dinner. And, it was just you go from cook one meal, clean up from that meal, prep for the next meal. That was my 3 days, and we did some swimming. We did some hiking. I was the only, the boys were playing in the lake. I'm the only one who, because holy fuck, I told you it was cold. It was damn cold. The highs were still only in maybe the low 50s. That lake was still in the 40s and 30s. It was freezing. And the boys were having fun. They were playing maybe knee high. I was crazy and stupid and walked and went all the way out and swam out there as far as I could go, as far as I could stand in the cold, freezing water. And I was like, all right, nope, I'm far enough out, and swam back and was just freezing my ass off. Oh, it was so cold. But it was fun. It was fun. And literally the first thing we did when we got back home was book our cabin for spring break. We did. So in March, we're going, and we've got a cabin already booked for Patagonia, which is in southern Arizona, which we opted for because realizing that if in the fall, Lyman is that cold, that is actually the warm season for them, at least that we could go. In the springtime coming out of the winter, that would actually possibly have snow, and it could actually be in the sub-freezing up there. So we're like, let's go somewhere warmer. So we picked Patagonia, which is in southern Arizona, and another lake, another cabin, slightly bigger cabin. I think this one actually has a mini fridge in it, but the weather's going to be practically the same because it's coming off of the winter. So we're still going to be dealing with like 30 something degrees at night. So it's going to be the same environment, but we've already decided we want to do this. We want to make this our regular thing. So, going out to these cabins and just, spending a few days out on the lake and kind of our version of camping. It is officially in one visit become a future plan for us. So it's been super exciting. And so just talking about it now, I'm getting back there. I'm super excited for March and getting to go do this again because it was such a blast. Whew. See, that's October. We're only into October. The other thing that happened at the end of October, because that was like mid-October when that happened. Well, I don't know if you remember, but I had a deal with my wife that actually revolved around our vacation because part of our trip back to Texas was supposed to be the possibility of bringing my brother-in-law's dog with us because you could say their dog is a little too much for them. And because we were in the market for another dog after Emmett, and it's been a year. And so we were like, we really are at a point where we want to get another dog. My wife had been asking me for a puppy forever. And so I told her after vacation, because there was, it could have gone either way. We could have gotten that dog or not. And so if we don't bring their dog with us, if we don't bring this dog back with us after vacation, we can get another dog. I will let you we'll find a puppy. Well, vacation got pushed back. And then we didn't go on vacation. We just went on a weekend to the lake. And then it's like, well, I technically owe my wife a dog. So she starts cruising through the, Craigslist and I think Nextdoor and kind of the ads and people, with dogs that need homes. And we ended up finding Mystic. And she is a husky. And we think she might have some coyote in her, but for the most part, she's a husky. And yeah, I've never had a husky before. I knew very little about them other than seeing videos and stuff on Instagram. And of course, when you take pictures of your dogs and post them on Instagram with appropriate hashtags, then your Instagram fills up with videos of other huskies. But yeah, we ended up with a husky who, because when I had to go, make the exchange and go pick her up from her previous owner, I'm the one who picked her up. So let's just say she imprinted on me. And so, unfortunately, whereas my wife wanted me to get her a dog, it seems we ended up getting me a dog to the point where she is currently laying underneath me because if I'm home, she is my shadow. And if I'm not home, she's crying about it. Really, a lot. And I've posted videos on Instagram of her and her behavior. And when I'm trying to go to work and she won't let me tie my boots and she'll just lay around the house howling at her, so distraught. If I'm behind a closed door in the house, she starts crying and howling at me. And to the point where if I'm giving Sam and helping him with his shower, I close the door because, privacy and all that. She sits outside the bathroom door howling at me. The only time she doesn't is if I'm in the bathroom doing my personal bathroom business, but she's sitting outside the bathroom door. She's just not howling at me. But my wife has sent me so many videos of her, and she's a dork. She's a husky. That's what I've come to gather. And so, as she is very much, bonded to me, she doesn't listen to hardly anybody else. But I've also had to start taking her to obedience classes just kind of give her the basics, sit, stay, lay down, off, she's really hyper. So she likes to jump up on people, just because she's really friendly. And if you want to see, there is a very silly picture of her. Again, I posted some pictures of her on my Instagram, of course, at odddadout, but also in the show notes at odddadoutpodcast.com. I don't even know what I'm telling you. odddadoutpodcast.com. Check out the show notes. Links are in the show notes in your podcast player and all that stuff too. But there's a picture of her being silly, sitting there, husky face. But yeah, I've been having to take her to obedience class the last few weeks. And for all of her crazy, we thought, oh, she's such a mess. It's going to be like so crazy. I don't know how she's going to get through this. She's like the star in the fucking class. Every time I tell her to do something, I tell her to sit, she sits. I tell her to lay down, she lays down. I tell her to follow me, with her eyes and, focus on me. She does it. She's easily walking in, we're practicing walking appropriately. She's great. She does everything she's told to do in class. Now, when we get home, she doesn't want to listen to anybody but me. So it basically comes down to, it's not that she can't do the stuff. She's just a brat. Yes, I'm telling you, you're a brat. I told you, she's right underneath me. She can hear me talking about her. But, it's funny because, on account of the dog that was supposed to be for my wife, even though Jasper is totally her baby, even like when we first got Jasper, rewinding, when we first got Jasper, he completely attached to me. It's what they do. They all attach to me. I was dad. I'm the alpha. I'm in charge, whatever. He would listen to me. I would ignore him on purpose. I would ignore him because my wife really was upset by this. So I would ignore him to get him to listen to her, to get, she would be calling him. She would be talking to him. She would be, laying him in with the affection. And so I would ignore him to get him to pay attention to her attention. Now I'm kind of in the same boat. Now Jasper is her baby. He gets up, he crawls up and lays down with her and does everything. He is her baby. But our new puppy, she's like 4, I guess. According to the record, she's 4, is mine. And we're like, I don't think she would handle me rejecting her and ignoring her nearly as well as Jasper did. So I'm pretty sure it'd just break her heart if I were to do to her what I did to Jasper to get her to listen to mom. But I have a husky now. She's a big goofball. But, I've never had a husky before. I've never dealt with it. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting. Life with husky. She's already destroyed our robot vacuum. She just can't, the Destiny, our shark vacuum, can't keep up with husky hair. I didn't realize this. More learning about husky life, but it's going to be interesting. And of course, like I said, that's not everything going on. There's so much else going on, and I got so much, like I did with the thumb story. Vacation took up a lot of time this week, but I do want to jump and give you the jumping. I realize I'm jumping and I'm all over the place right now, and I haven't had any bumpers or I haven't thrown anything in there to break stuff up, and you just don't know, man. But I do want to get to my podcast feature and my recommended listening section and give you an update on some changes that are going to actually happen in this segment. So I know I said I didn't have any bumpers, but it's time for recommended listening.
Recommended listening. A friendly desert community where the sun is hot, the moon is beautiful, and mysterious lights pass overhead while we all pretend to sleep. Welcome to Night Vale. listeners. To start things off, I've been asked to read this brief notice. The City Council announces the opening of a new dog park at the corner of Earl and Somerset near the Ralphs. They would like to remind everyone that dogs are not allowed in the dog park. People are not allowed in the dog park. It is possible you will see hooded figures in the dog park. Do not approach them. Do not approach the dog park. The fence is electrified and highly dangerous. Try not to look at the dog park, and especially do not look for any period of time at the hooded figures. The dog park will not harm you. And now the news.
And I think my review that I did basically sums it up. The title, the show that makes you say, okay, so I guess that's a thing. Because Night Vale does that a lot. The creativity and the way they do it, and the originality of things that exist in Night Vale, you just kind of accept, well, I guess this is a thing now. A literal 5-headed dragon running for mayor against a faceless old woman who secretly lives in all of your homes. There aren't a lot of, it's very difficult to describe Night Vale. It is. Even the description is there's nothing in their description that can explain Night Vale to you. You have to listen to it. Even the official description from the website and the Apple Store and all of the things really doesn't help you. Welcome to Night Vale is a twice-monthly podcast in the style of community updates for the small desert town of Night Vale, featuring local weather, air quotes, okay, not literal quotes because it's typed, news, announcements from the sheriff's secret police, mysterious lights in the night sky, dark hooded figures with unknowable powers, and cultural events. That is the best and worst way to possibly describe Welcome to Night Vale. All of those things in that description are 100% completely accurate, while also telling you absolutely nothing. And yeah, that's kind of the problem. And even that opening line that I played, that is the very first opening line from the first episode of Night Vale, and I like to play that because it gives you the tone. It gives you a vibe for the show. It tells you next to nothing, but it gives you a vibe for how the show feels, because the music really is important. And the music by Disparition, really, really important to the grand scheme of Night Vale, because without his music to set the energy, it's really difficult to get to, like, Night Vale without Disparition's music would not work, really. But as I'm getting into, talking about the pros and cons, I'm going to jump over into kind of the points I made in my full review that I wrote and released at the beginning of December and completely forgot to tell you about. But the first official, formal, written Odd Dad Out review on the website at odddadpodcast.com. Forgive me if you go and read this. It is a bit, wordy, and it's kind of rambly because, me. Positives. In the early seasons, the story arc, it really sucks you in. It's great. Because it plays out with individual episodes are kind of their own thing, but there is kind of a season-wide story arc that kind of gets interwoven in the background of stuff going on. Today might be Valentine's Day, or it might be Trash Day, or it might be, I don't even, it's open house at the community college, whatever it is. And all of that main focus of the story, whatever. But stuff going on in the background of that is, and now let's check the news. And in the news, it's talking about the mayoral elections or something like that. Or a new dog appeared in town today, and next thing you know, that dog kind of appears in every episode. What's up with that dog? Hey, that dog is here in the studio. How weird. And stuff like that. And the difference, the way the season story arc is woven in the background of the rest of the episodes is really very well done. And the biggest thing, besides the music that I mentioned with Dispersion, is just the development of the characters over what's now 8 years. It's kind of crazy. There's so many characters that there's been a ton of character development and growth and change over the years, where you can look at the narrator Cecil from the beginning and you just kind of think he's just a generic radio guy, to when he gets deeper and as the story progresses and you're learning more about him and his personal life and his history and maybe his biases and how he tells the news and things like that, and his relationship with his brother-in-law, his relationship with the different people in town, and when I'm trying not to spoil anything, and his relationships with different people and how things happen and how things transpire, or the arc of Hiram McDaniels, the literal 5-headed dragon, who was introduced in the second episode, wanted for insurance fraud. Rewind that. Hiram McDaniels, a literal 5-headed dragon, wanted for insurance fraud. He's wanted for insurance fraud because he basically stole the identification of another person, supposedly because he hasn't been convicted. But, thanks, Mark Chen, I believe, is, they did a great callback to it. There's sometimes they'll do these kind of one-off episodes that break with the normal, episode format. And they did a episode that was a true crime podcast talking about the murder of Frank Chen, which, call back all the way back to the beginning, and where now Frank Chen's family have arrived in Night Vale and are looking for him. And he disappeared 8 years ago. And, there's a whole big thing. It's for them to bring that back up so many years later is just hilarious. But the story arc with Hiram, and starting off with just this dragon, to the mayoral race, into Hiram is wanted for murder, I think, or attempted murder, and all of this whole big thing, and the trial of Hiram McDaniels, and that was a kind of a whole other thing. Or intern Dana eventually becoming Mayor Dana, eventually former Mayor Dana, and everything with Desert Bluffs, and there's so many different the development of the entire world and community. And it's so complex and everything. And it's amazing what they do, and all these everything that's really hit is there's so much they have put into this world, and the depth of the characters that they've built over 8 years, that even though they intentionally keep certain details vague, specifically Cecil's appearance. They've never actually described Cecil other than maybe a particular outfit he's wearing. They don't. And that is with intention. They've always said that they don't establish what Cecil looks like. It's all for you to come up with in your head. But, I just there's too many characters for me to get into, and I do get into it a bit more in the written review. I'm trying not to get too far off because there's a lot of points to hit. But just that growth of character and the world building and the rules of the world that they live in, how you exist in Night Vale. There's so many things that you have to kind of get into, and so you have to really immerse yourself in this, and you do when you're listening to the show. And then still things like running gags and the dark humor of it, because as dark and gritty of a show as it is, and it can get very graphic. I mean, it can get, some of the stuff is very gory and very, like, if you have a problem with spiders, or mostly spiders, there's some creepy shit. Sometimes there's like, I would not, it is a show that I would say warrants a trigger warning, but at the same time, if you're the type of person who needs a trigger warning for something, you shouldn't be listening to Welcome to Night Vale. You just shouldn't. This entire show is one giant trigger for so many things. So, yeah, just saying that. Excuse me. Hiccups. But it is very dark humor, but still humor. And when things get too serious, they'll like flip, because it's done in a radio show thing. So they'll have the really deep, dark story. And now the weather. And now, your community radio, or the community calendar. And now the weather report, or I don't know. I always go, because every episode has the weather. The weather is actually a musical segment. And basically it creates a time jump of some type within the story. Sometimes it's the length of the song. Sometimes it's multiple weeks. It's been 17 days. Man, that's a long song. Stuff like that. And there's always these kind of gags, but basically you have the weather and then you have the resolution of the story. And personally, the weather is always very hit or miss. You can have some great weather segments, and then you have some not so great weather segments. And there's kind of debate in the fandom over, do you just skip the weather because it's not important? Sometimes it's important. But for me, I look at it from, I will give the songs the opportunity. I'll give them a chance. But sometimes I'm just like, yeah, fuck it. I don't want to listen to this. I don't like this song. And that's perfectly fine. On the more negative side of things, I'll just say it. In 8 years, it's starting to, the holes and the cracks in Night Vale are starting to show. First of all, I should just say, the big thing with Night Vale, and it's a big con as a new person trying to get into an 8-year-old show at year 8. You can't. This is a show where you have to go back to the beginning. And they kind of crafted, I think it was around season 5 or 6, a kind of a soft reboot. It was like, oh, you can jump in from here. You really can't. Because you really need to go back to episode 1 and start again and listen from the beginning, just so you know who the hell everybody is. Because, like I said, there's so much character development and so much built from those early, especially in the first season, establishes so much that in order to understand who the people are at play, you might be able to jump into the story and like, but you need to know who they are. Like, oh yeah, this is a standalone story and it's fine. But you don't know who any of these people are to give a shit. So you have to have that. You have to go back to the start. And I already mentioned the weather segments being very hit or miss. Sometimes you got some great music that comes up in the weather. Sometimes you're like, click, fast forward, get out of this, garbage. Some they just suck. And I'm going to say this, and it's a probably a common complaint I'm going to have with a lot of bigger shows. There's too damn many ads. I really like, and I say this, and I'm fully aware that it's kind of a shitty complaint because it's how they make their money. Realistically, for Night Vale, it's not how they make their money. They make their money on tour, because they tour the show and do live shows and sell lots of shit and merch up the ass and all this stuff. And they run Patreon and they do all, it's like, these guys have become very wealthy. I wouldn't say they're rich, but they've become very famous and they've made a very good living off of this show. And they have very long ads and they're very wordy and they don't vibe. And there's a very big difference. And it's a nitpick I have, as a podcaster, as a creator, as a person who edits podcasts. Ads need to fit in and have a certain flow, and they have to not stick out like a sore thumb. Me and sore thumbs. the ads in Night Vale are basically just, here's ads. Welcome to Night Vale. Here's ads. Ads. Buy this thing. And now the story. And they're very abrupt, and I appreciate that they front load them all. And then they stick it's all at the very beginning and it's all at the very end. And realistically, once the end music starts playing, everybody shuts it off. Nobody listens to fucking Meg. Nobody listens. And who cares what today's proverb is, Meg? Because especially now that what they've started doing, and again, it's going to the ads thing. The music starts, then they do the ending ads, and then they do the credits and the today's proverb. Like, it's slimy to me. And I realize, again, this is how they make their money. Your ads can be done better. And again, this is a complaint I have with a lot of bigger shows, is the way they do their ads is distracting. It's like, if you feel compelled to skip the ads, if you notice the ads, they're doing it badly. Anyway, sorry, I went on way too much about ads, and I it sounds slimy that I'm saying it that way, but it's a thing. Kind of back to going next point, back to something I mentioned before. The cracks are showing. That's really it. My view on Welcome to Night Vale is not nearly as glowing as it was back in episode 66 when I reviewed it the first time. And it is still one of my favorite shows, hands down. But after 8 years, the later seasons really started to fall apart. It was right around season 5 that I started really seeing the meh of the story. And they started making some changes in the way they were telling the stories, and they were doing some different stuff creatively and with storytelling format, and doing kind of these multiple mini story arcs. So you'll have a 5-part story and then another 3 or 4-part story and stuff like that. And there was a lot of focus on smaller characters that they'd been introduced, but they've never been major players. And the problem with that is you don't give a shit about them. They basically the point of we're going to do a 5-episode arc talking about Coach. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. And once you see it, you'll oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm not going to fuck up his name. And but you don't have as deep of an emotional investment with a lot of these characters. And it makes it harder to care. You don't care about what's going on with them. And so it's a harder time to kind of really, you don't care. And I realize I keep saying it. It's yeah, you might, it's it's a well-told story, but you don't feel the attachment that you do when it's Hiram or Cecil or Steve Carlsberg or Dana or Tamika Flynn or even city council or station management. You don't have that commitment, that you do to those other characters, or Koshak, the cat in the men's room. You don't have that as much of an emotional attachment to them. And again, I really feel, and it sounds shitty to say, later on in the series, the writers broke off. I wouldn't say they broke off. They were still doing this, but they started writing other shows as well. That's when they started doing Alice Isn't Dead. That's when they started doing Within the Wires separately. So now they're writing for multiple shows at a time. Now they're writing for several different shows at the same time. And you really kind of feel in the general, at least I do. I see in the show in the later seasons when their attention was divided, that the writing for Night Vale started to suffer. And it sounds shitty. But this is my opinion, but I feel that the writing for Night Vale started falling off at the point where they started expanding the Night Vale network into multiple shows and doing more stuff. And as the business of Night Vale and making the most money they could in the Night Vale universe crept in more. The writing for Night Vale got weaker. And the main storylines for each season got to be less cohesive. And it's sick. It's really sad for me, just because like I really do love the show, but there are, there are much more glaring errors and issues in it now that I didn't see back then. So it's, I feel bad for criticizing a show that I enjoy so much. And I do. I still love the show. And incidentally, I gave it 3.5 stars. And I give it 3.5 stars mostly because of kind of the shortcomings now. And yes, I realize it's like, yes, is it a great show? 100%. It is still an amazing show, and I 100% would recommend it. Anybody, really. If you have even the slightest inkling of a twisted sense of humor and you appreciate dark humor and sort of a Lovecraftian sort of vibe, and it's kind of got a Lovecraftian sort of vibe and inspiration, but not overtly Lovecraft. But if you appreciate that and just general kind of creepy sci-fi, supernaturally, what the fuck is this going on, audio drama type stuff, 100% you should listen to Welcome to Night Vale. If you're somebody who needs a trigger warning for kind of anything, you probably shouldn't, because there's going to be something in like everything. Like there's going to be something in every episode of Night Vale that's going to trigger somebody if you have like any kind of an anxiety. But in none of the cons, I'm going to say this, none of my problems with Night Vale are anything that would keep me from listening to it. It's really it. The only thing that I would say that's a con that would stop me from listening to it or not recommend it is the fact that you do have to commit to go all the way back to the beginning and listen to everything. It is really a necessity for this show, but that's also a necessity for most audio drama. It really is. So aside from that, and if you're listening to audio drama, you're probably going back. It's just kind of the nature of the medium. So that's the only thing I would say. Other than that, all of my negatives for the show, nothing is something that would say you shouldn't listen to it. That's it. It's just me kind of nitpicking for the sake of there are some faults. There are some cracks showing with age. Okay, doesn't change that it's a great show. That's really it. Again, 3.5 stars out of 5. Again, I probably would have given it I probably would have made, if I was doing stars before, 4 to 4.5 before. Again, it's just the shortcomings and the falling apart for me personally in the last few years. And I realize I'm justifying my rating after going on this long, but that is what it is. And again, this is me trying to go through, my written review as I wrote it and not read the whole thing. But again, the full review is going to be in the show notes. It's linked in the show notes. It's on the website at odddadoutpodcast.com. Of course, go to welcometonightvale.com because you still should be listening to Welcome to Night Vale. If you've got a sense of humor and you can put up with my ass, you could probably listen to Welcome to Night Vale, and you should. You really should. It's a fun show. It really is. It's great. Don't take my 3.5 stars and my nitpicks about shit to mean you shouldn't listen to it. And I realize I've been saying this a few times now, but go listen to it. Now, before I wrap up the show, I do want to give kind of an update on how this segment is going to change, because I kind of did this now in much more of in the Vime. What the fuck is a Vime? In the style of the previous recommended listening segments. As I am now going to be writing, trying to do my damnedest to do a weekly podcast review for the website. So what I'm going to do going forward, and I'm so sorry before I say this, I'm so sorry the show's been so long today. I'm just, every 2 weeks I'm talking more when I'm talking. Sorry. But going forward, what I want to do is kind of turn the end of the show into a what I'm listening. So I'm going to be trying to check out some new podcasts, and I'm going to be checking out the recommendation from Tori, which was Me and Paranormal You. And like I said, I'm going to listen to that a little bit more. But kind of my rundown, the way I described that podcast earlier, that's kind of what I'm going to do is hey, I'm listening to this. It's like kind of an update on what am I checking out. Then maybe you'd be interested. And I'm absolutely want your recommendations of new stuff for me to check out. Because I need to check out some new podcasts and I need some new stuff to review. I've got my old stuff that I'm going to go back and write reviews for and talk about again, but I want new stuff to listen to and new stuff to review and new stuff to expand my listening. So I'm going to be giving a kind of a Andrew Scott, what am I listening to? And I will give you a quick rundown summary of my written review for my most recent podcast reviews. And I will let you know, if I know at the time, what I've got coming up for review, which I'm going to do now. Coming up this week, later this week, possibly may even be live on the website by the time this episode drops. I will be talking about or giving my review of the Box of Oddities podcast, which is another weirdo. It's another weird one. I mean that in the best possible way, but it's another one of those kind of weird sort of paranormally type shows where a married couple, Kat and Jethro Gilligan-Toth, they, as they put it, bring their irreverent. I've been talking for too long. Let's start again. Kat and Jethro Gilligan-Toth bring their irreverent brand of humor and unique chemistry to an exploration of the strange, the bizarre, and the unexpected. Basically, in a nutshell, married couple talks about weird shit. Yeah, in much less pretty language that they used. Weird couple, funny couple talks about weird shit. It's a fun show. It was recommended by Allie in the Oddballs Facebook group, and it has very easily, quickly become one of my go-tos. So look for my full review of the Box of Oddities coming up by the end of the week. I'm not giving you a definitive thing, and you might be listening to this on Saturday, and it's already live on the website. Who knows? But I will have a link for it in the show notes when it goes live. And of course, you should be checking out odddadoutpodcast.com all the time to get your updates on reviews, and follow me on the social medias, on the Facebook and the Twitter and the Instagrams. And I'm going to try and do more about all the stuff and doing more and more writing and more stuff and more recording and more. But I'm going to do more. That is my promise. That is my commitment, is that I want to do more. But I've already talked your damn head off. I don't know if the episodes are going to stay this long, because of all of the spending more time between shows, if I'm just going to talk more. I don't know. I'm sorry if I do or not, because then it fills more time. I don't know. But I got to get out of here because it's late, and you've been listening to me for over an hour, and what the fuck is wrong with you, you psychopath? Again, do you want to leave me a voicemail or a text message with a podcast recommendation or feedback or whatever the fuck you feel like just saying, hey, 516-636-7631. That's 516-ODO-POD1. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at OddDadOut, OddDadOutPodcast.com, show at OddDadOutPodcast.com. There's a Facebook group, Oddballs Facebook group. So much. I gotta trim down all the stuff. But until next time, good night, Oddballs. Good night.